Well, good morning, everyone. I thought it might be kind of fun this morning if I do this Wednesday walkabout and I show you kind of the rounds of my morning, at least in the back landscape. The front we'll reserve for another time, but this is the view I have from my back steps that you all are very, very familiar with by now. And you can see the progress so far. There's been a few additions, a few changes, some zhuzhing, and I'll point that out as we go along. But this is kind of the broad view of what it's looking like now. I'm still waiting on a few things that I'll point out as we kind of walk the property, walk around the patio, see how things are doing. And I think we have the stamp of approval on the windows, which will be painted. I'm just having to be patient. But I have the stamp of approval because Hubs and I, we sometimes speak of things as the best money we've ever spent. Things like our kids' education and the fireplace we put in our last kitchen and the gardens we put in the back. Well, Hubs the other day, as he was sitting in the great room in the morning with a breeze coming in through these windows. And then he says it almost every evening now as we sit outside and we can hear the music wafting from inside. He has put these in the category, these casement windows, of best money ever spent. And I would have to agree. We have been so pleased, not only with their appearance, but just their functionality and the indoor-outdoor aesthetic that they give to this outdoor living room. If I were coming in from the side gate, this would be my vantage point. I really like the way the topiaries look on the table, and my autumn plantings of all of the coleus and the hibiscus. Got a good shadow of me filming this. The way the pumpkins look cascading up and down the stairs. I'm waiting for some recent purchases. So I bought some pillows for the chairs in the back to make them a little bit cozier to sit in. And those, I think, arrive tomorrow. And I can't tell you how much we have enjoyed sitting out here in the evening. It is just so pleasant, and in the morning too. Now I'm going to spin around here because before I go too much further, I want to talk a little bit about the storage shed, because it's really been a point of interest to all of you and its placement. Now, some of you felt, strongly or not, that it should be located over there by where all of the pots, my potting area now, the pots and those two chairs and where the composter is. But that area, as you can see, is kind of tight. The other thing that it has, which was a factor, is it does have falling mess from the juniper, the cedar trees overhead. And that would have been an issue with the storage unit, the shed. I also like the fact that it's just out here in the open. It's easily accessible from the east side of the house, and I like the way it gives visual weight to that corner, particularly because another recent acquisition arrived yesterday and I need to put it together, and that is the table that I ordered for this space. Now, there will be lots of rearranging. I'm not really sure if this is the table I want for it to be for this location. I'm thinking it is. I still have to address the issue of my glass tabletop, but I wanted to have the other table here first before I made any hard and fast decisions on the tabletop that I already have. Obviously, while I like the plantings that are in the corners right now of this little side patio, what I think of as the serving patio, nevertheless, it'll be a little bit cumbersome when I do entertain. So these pots can easily be moved to another location. That fun blue chip juniper over there from Sharon's Nursery, and then Forever Goldie and some more autumnal pots. But all of this is transient. I mean, it can move, it can come and go, and what it will just basically serve the needs of my entertaining, depending on what kind it is. I do love the fact that with the storage unit here, this is where I can keep all of my sprays, my fertilizer, my garden tools, my garden gloves, and they stay nice and dry and secure in there. And I'm very pleased with the fact that I did decide to go ahead and paint it the Vater Cottage Gray, which, by the way, you can find if you go to the community tab, or you can ask me again and we'll try to get the formula to you. I decided to stick with a really tight color palette back here in terms of gourds and pumpkins. So these are all grays. It is parodying that silvery gray look that I wanted for the backyard. I still have not pruned up the Japanese maple because I'm waiting to do that for you guys. And I apologize for this walkabout coming up on Thursday instead of Wednesday. Yesterday turned out to be far busier than I anticipated. And by the time I got out to do the Wednesday walkabout, it was just simply too hot, too many interruptions, too many big trucks going by. Now, those of you that were concerned about the clean out valve, you can see that I indeed painted it black, put some tufts of ajuga around it, and have discovered it in no way is anywhere trippable because of the way that we come down these stairs, and pretty soon it'll be obscured completely. There will be more ground covers, not a lot, but more ground cover spreading inside the areas between the flagstone and the bricks, which will tend to soften the lines. There's a little mound of white pumpkins. Can you see the rays of that east sun just coming over the fence line? That's just how brilliant it is. I talked to Kayla about the gate, and I think we've made some decisions. You may have noticed that I added a little bit more brick and pavers coming from the steps down to this little patio. Those are things that I didn't do originally because I wanted to see how we actually traveled in the space. I also wanted to use up whatever material we had left over. So we had lots of half a brick left over, and I love the way it looks. That will be softened with some ajuga, and probably that corner with some soft caress mahonia. That kind of remains to be seen. But back to my potting station area, I do love the way it looks. Now, we expanded this patio section a little bit so there'd be more room. And it may be that I put kind of a landing and a launch pad, some kind of paver or something in front of the pot shelving. But I love the way it looks over here. And right now, I just have a little table for potting in front of it. But you'll notice that's another change we made is I moved these galvanized tubs over here. And those will be filled with potting soil and gravel that I'll be able to cover up. And then the composter is there too. It needs to be leveled. But once I get the rest of the mulch down in the gravel, this will all look very cohesive, utilitarian, and I think attractive in that kind of industrial chic way. Now, as happens and how I kind of roll when I work on these projects, as spaces get cleaned up, the rest of the stuff, let's just call it the stuff of life, gets moved to other areas. And I'll show you what I mean. So beyond the 2 tubs that I have for the gravel and the potting soil, this is where we have decided to hang our ladder, the wheelbarrow, and my dolly. And it in no way impedes passage up and down this walkway. Now, this log rack does, and yes, I have some things there that I need to take back to the recycling center, but I like how easily accessible these are. We just hung them up with some giant hooks, and they can easily be taken down. You do not see them when you look into the backyard towards the potting station because they are hidden by the garage. By the way, I know you'll ask, that's a Mantis compost tumbler. I do love it. I may or may not get some different tubs for right here. I'm not sure. The ones that were there originally form fit. They came from Stuart's house, actually. They were some of his things he was giving away, and I was the happy person, the happy recipient. So I may go with some round metal containers there. I'm not really sure. But over here, this is where the remains of the day still are. And even though there's a lot of stuff back here that needs to be organized, it's a fraction of what it was originally. So this is the next extension of things that I need to do and need to organize. And I will do that in conjunction with cleaning out the garage, because some of this will be moved into the garage. Some of you have said, well, I should plant inside that brick wall. And I'll probably do something temporary, so I've got something attractive to look outside of when I look out my kitchen window. But this is just really not hospitable to anything growing. It doesn't have irrigation, it's hard pan, it gets very, very weedy, it really gets irregular light, and quite frankly, I don't want any more stuff that I have to take care of in difficult situations. So I probably will just leave it be, use it for some, albeit attractive, storage, and have some kind of element that will be attractive when I look out my kitchen window. This is one of my next potting projects. I've got a boxwood topiary in here that will probably be relocated to another pot, and all of these things growing underneath it, those are all foxglove, and I will be transplanting those very deliberately and specifically located in the front yard. But it's still been so hot during the day, and I think I'll wait till it's just a little bit cooler to dispatch those guys to their ultimate destination. A number of you rightly pointed out that the angle of that needs to remain. If it's flat, then water can pool and it can rot. And if I would have thought about it, that would have come to me eventually, I hope. So right now, I'll just do things to kind of obscure it. And this is a signature touch of mine anyway, hanging a basket. So I'll continue to zhuzh this up, but I do love the way these pots look here. A number of you asked about my squirrel situation here because it was just so difficult at the other house. Not nearly as much of a problem here. And I think that's, first of all, because the type of trees that I have, but also because the trees tend to be located on the perimeter of my property, not up close to the house and where I have things like pumpkin staged. So because of that, they just really haven't been a problem, and I can just kind of enjoy looking at them. I have not had one nibble in my pumpkins. I love the way these Forever Goldie arborvitaes are flanking the side door, and one of the next things on my list is to get some lanterns or something to hang on either side of the garage door. I do want to point out to you that this Encore azalea has some pretty blooms on it. These poor plants, I just abused them this year. All of these things were in pots. We would just kind of shove them around to get them out of the way. And by all of these things, I'm talking about those azaleas, but also these hydrangeas. And by the way, this is a testament to how tough they are. So these are Annabelle hydrangeas that I took from the other house. I believe they're both Annabelles. We thought they were when we dug them up. And I am thrilled to report that they are nestling in quite nicely. Let me show you how they're putting out new growth at the base there, which pleases me no end, and also along the stems, and even the oak leaf hydrangea. Look at that. Look at those new little buds on there. That just gives me no end of pleasure. So these guys are getting lots of TLC now that they are in their final resting place, destination. I shouldn't say resting place. That implies something not happy, but in their final location. And once these fill out next year, this whole entire area will be consumed by both their foliage and their blooms. And I am continuing to feed my annuals back here, all of the coleus. And I think I told you that these pots would fill out in very short order, and indeed they have. That Joseph's coat that I took cuttings from the window box in front, it's really filled out. Leah, by the way, loves this pot here. And I definitely, before Hubs gets too upset with me, I definitely need to harvest the basil and get to making some pesto. That's my question of the day. Do you guys make pesto the traditional way with pinon nuts, or do you use walnuts or some other kind of nuts? Or no nuts at all? I typically use roasted walnuts. Lots of happy things going on in the raised beds in the back. And yes, I do love the way they look. The lettuce is still growing. I did put some cloches on top just in case I had some interest from some little diggers. I have not yet, but just in case. And because I think they look dear, I put some cloches on, and I'll put some links to cloches below. And you can see that the bright light Swiss chard and the sweet little lettuces are coming up. I did transplant from the front the Burning Love Leucothoe. Have no idea if that's really how it's pronounced, but I put it in a pot here with some kale. And ultimately, this will go in the ground over there in the shadier area, but I love the way its bronze-tipped foliage looks, how it captures the light, and it looks with that kale. And then I just tunked a couple of white pumpkins in there. Some boxwood, or some of you have pointed out Greek basil. I guess it's more officially Greek basil. It's referred to by both, and you can Google it under both when looking at it, researching it, or looking at it for purchase. And then I've got lots of carrots that will need thinning that have germinated in here. This was seed that my friend Jean, formerly of Southern Living, sent me. I have no mums in the front because there's so much other color, but I do have mums in the back, and I am looking forward. And I bought them in very, very tight bud because it's still really too hot for them. So I bought them in tight bud, and I am very anxious to see them start showing their color, because this entire area doesn't have a lot of color right now, and that's fairly intentional. The front has so much. I wanted this to be a little more calming with just pops of color, and those mums are just that. They're pops of color, and I will very much look forward to that color expressing itself. Well, boy, has this Silverado sage, aka Texas sage, been putting on a show. Oh my goodness, you can see all of the fuchsia flowers that it's dropped, and it no sooner drops those flowers than it will put out a whole new set of buds, which will then flower. Both Leah and Stuart are wild about this, so let's just say a prayer over it that I can get it to overwinter. And in the last and final planting box, you can see the sugar snap peas that are starting to reach for the sky. I relocated the olive trees over to this area just because I just liked the way they looked better, and I felt that there needed to be some visual weight on both sides of this window. So when we clean out the garage, the window will get washed, that label on the inside will be removed. I'll probably put an oblong planter on the windowsill, but for right now I really like the way the olive trees flank it. One of them was starting to show signs of some scale, and I've been spraying it with neem oil. Don't you just love the way the bright tips of the Roman candle podocarpus kind of glisten in the sun? And boy, equally as happy as the hydrangeas that finally got planted in the ground are the figs, and they have put out all sorts of beautiful new fresh growth that's not tattered by the heat, not browned on the edges. This table that is sitting here right now it's another piece of temporary furniture that's just here for when I entertain. And speaking of entertaining, we're having some guests over tonight for cocktails before we all go out to dinner and a show, and we'll probably be coming out here. The railings have been ordered, and they'll just get here when they get here. And I think that's just that smattering of black wrought iron will really be beautiful there and kind of break up the expanse in a pretty way, not in a stealing the attention kind of way. And on the east side, still got some zhuzhing to do in that corner by the gate. You can see my little work table there. But the plant theaters are probably as decorated as they're going to get for this season. But the begonias look happy. I love the way the fern look there. And I'll probably, in some fashion, I'm not sure how, but in some fashion I will probably be planting some bulbs back here. They may or may not be tulips. They may be some minor bulbs, and I am thinking that over there by the potting station and by the wood chairs that may be where I decide to have some little miniature daffodils and things that speak to a more woodland environment. And last but not least, so many of you made the recommendation that I put those solar operated tea lights into some of my little pots, and indeed I did. And then to kind of cover up the white, I put some little tufts of Spanish moss. I need to do that to the rest of them. It is so delightful to come out here in the morning or in the evening and see all of them illuminated almost as if by magic. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with me on this Wednesday Walkabout. We are going to have a Linda Vater Live coming up on October 8th with some really exciting news to share. We'll be doing some giveaways. And I look forward to visiting with you again this weekend. You guys have a great Wednesday, or Thursday, I should say.